Cast your minds back to March of 2020, the first weeks of the pandemic in this country. While millions of Americans were stocking up on food and toilet paper and hunkering down at home, Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky was carrying on as usual. He worked out at the Senate gym, went swimming in the pool, and met fellow lawmakers for lunch. And it turned out he was doing all of that after he learned that two people at a fundraiser he attended back home in Kentucky had tested positive for COVID-19. And while he was waiting for the results of his own test, on March 22nd, Rand Paul announced he had tested positive, the first senator to do so. But that personal experience with the virus, a high-risk situation for the senator who is missing part of one lung, did not change his blasé attitude towards this deadly pandemic. In fact, Senator Paul has since been positively swimming in COVID disinformation.
I'm just curious about your decision not to wear a mask when you're walking around.
I have immunity. I've already had the virus, so I can't get it again, and I can't give it to anybody.
I can tell you that locally, when we've had patients that are sick, they are getting the hydroxychloroquine, and there's at least anecdotal evidence that seems to be working and helping them.
We have 11 million people in our country who have already had COVID. We should tell them to celebrate. We should tell them to throw away their masks, go to restaurants, live again, because these people are now immune. But Dr. Fauci doesn't want to admit to any of that. Dr. Fauci's like, oh, woe is me.
And now Rand Paul is still spewing nonsense. Yesterday, he released this unhinged 2-minute video basically urging Americans to resist all CDC guidelines.
It's time for us to resist. They can't arrest all of us. They can't keep all of your kids home from school. We don't have to accept the mandates, lockdowns, and harmful policies of the petty tyrants and bureaucrats. We can simply say no, not again. Nancy Pelosi, you will not arrest or stop me or anyone on my staff from doing our jobs. We have either had COVID, had the vaccine, or been offered the vaccine. We will make our own health choices. We will not show you a passport. We will not wear a mask. We will not be forced into random screenings and testings so you can continue your drunk with power reign over the Capitol. No one should follow the CDC's anti-science mask mandates.
It's easy to laugh at Republicans like Rand Paul and the insane things that they say and do for attention, but this stuff is dangerous. Some might say it's incitement. Charles Booker is a former Democratic state lawmaker in Kentucky who's running against Rand Paul in next year's Senate election. And Olivia Troy is a former advisor to Vice President Mike Pence, where she worked on the White House coronavirus task force. She's now director of the Republican Accountability Project. Thank you both for joining me this evening. Charles, let me start with you. You have diabetes, I believe. So as a person with an underlying condition, does your opponent, Rand Paul's disinformation campaign about COVID, feel kind of personal?
Well, it absolutely is personal. You know, I've had to ration my insulin because I couldn't afford it. I nearly died from it. And I know I'm at high risk. And my wife and I are preparing to have our third daughter at any moment now. I've lost an uncle to COVID. This is not a game. We're in a moment where a pandemic has caused us so much loss that we need leadership to fight our way forward. And instead of that, he's chasing conspiracies. He's trying to find the boogeyman. And he's inciting lawlessness and fear-mongering. And it's going to cost us lives. And we have to stop it.
It is going to cost us lives. It's deeply depressing. Olivia, it's the nonsense is coming not just from Rand Paul, but from many members of your party, including your former boss, the president. Donald Trump was on Fox News over the weekend complaining that people would have said he did a horrible job if he were president during COVID. Have a listen.
Well, first of all, could you imagine if I were president right now and we had this massive attack from the coronavirus? You know, now they like to call it they have new names and they'll have other new names, but it's exactly what we had. We had the same thing. If that were me, they'd be saying, what a horrible thing, what a horrible job.
Imagine if we had a horrible attack from the coronavirus, Donald Trump says. I'm pretty sure you were in the White House when there was one and he failed us.
Yeah, imagine that. Imagine how many meetings I sat in when negligent behavior took place. Imagine how many negligent statements were made from the Oval Office when Donald Trump was sitting there as commander-in-chief of our entire country during this large pandemic that would be one of the largest of our generation that continues on still today. And look, the origin is right there. It started from day one. This divisiveness on COVID started with him, and it continues. This legacy continues still today. and this negligent, shameful behavior by people who call themselves, or who are elected officials, who are undeserving, in my opinion, of the title of U.S. Senator for Rand Paul, case in point, who is one of the major, super spreaders, I would say, of misinformation on COVID and other conspiracy theories that he espouses, are undeserving of elected office because they're negligent and they're putting Americans continuously at risk. And you're correct. He is inciting people. We've already seen, fights over mask mandates. We've seen people, how angry they are, the way they behave. We see that this type of rhetoric, encourages this behavior by their supporters. And it's just greed. It's greediness for power, to remain in power at whatever cost and whatever you say. And it is horrifying to think that these are the people who are in the leadership of our country right now.
Yes, indeed. And when we talk about incitement, Charles, I wonder, what do you make of Marjorie Taylor Greene's latest antics? It's easy to dismiss her as a kind of crazy congresswoman, but she's speaking at events where she's suggesting people should exercise their Second Amendment rights when people come to the door to give them vaccine information, basically encouraging members of the Republican base to shoot people. I mean, that is where we've reached in America in 2021.
It's a gross shame. And what Marjorie Taylor Greene and Rand Paul are doing is not about freedom. It's not about our constitutional rights. They don't care about that. They are pulling these tricks, these tired old tricks, to cause division, to sow fear, because they believe that's the only way they can win. Now, look, Rand Paul is pulling these distractions out in a gross way because he doesn't want the people to know that he voted against relief in the middle of a pandemic, that he has been opposing investments in our infrastructure, that he doesn't support community safety. He wants to put our men and women in uniform at risk, our emergency services at risk. And so they're doing this because they don't want people to realize they can't lead. But we see through the BS, and that's why I'm running for U.S. Senate, to defeat Rand Paul, but more importantly, build the infrastructure we need to transform our future so that we're ready for the next pandemic. We're ready for the next crisis. And I'm asking everyone, go to charlesbooker.org to stand with us so that we can tell a new story for our future and get these clowns out of office.
Well, they're certainly behaving in a clownish way. There's no doubt about that. Olivia, Texas Governor Greg Abbott literally posted a picture of himself with a fiddle while his state is burning through the Delta outbreak. And I have to ask you this question, genuine question. I'm not trolling here. You worked with these Republican politicians. It was your party. People like Abbott, people like DeSantis. Do they care whether people live or die in their state? I genuinely wonder, do they just not give a damn?
Well, clearly by the issuance of the executive orders that they continue to issue, and by creating division on this topic continuously, there's no need. There is absolutely no need to push back on mask mandates and to create division on it. Just protect the residents of your state. That's the bottom line. And so, no, do I think they care? No, it's about quest for power again, remaining in power, doing every antic there is for a soundbite. We know that DeSantis is eyeing 2024. And I'm thinking he is Trump mini-me, right? Someone like Trump should never be in office again. Someone like Trump. Remember that. Remember the negligence. And that is who we have right now. And these individuals. And I'm watching all of this with the lawsuits going on and the cruise lines that are trying to protect the people so they can go on cruises again. I mean, when does it ever stop? And right now I saw that the announcement where Abbott is asking for out-of-state help again for the healthcare workers. Let's think about them. They have been in this fight in the front lines on this pandemic from day one. And we've got to have their backs. And these governors are negligent. They just don't care.
That is a problem. They really just do not seem to care. And from governors to senators, it's just more misinformation and more nonsense day after day, and people are literally dying. It's just unbelievable. We'll have to leave it there. Charles Booker, Olivia Troy, thank you both so much for your insights tonight. Appreciate it. With school about to start and more younger kids coming down with COVID, where is the vaccine for them? I'll ask a top pediatrician about that ahead. Don't go away.